Hello, and greetings on this beautiful fall day. This is Michael Cross. If you're a subscriber to my YouTube channel, you've probably listened to some of my shows on UCY TV's Unlock the Door Radio. And if you're not a subscriber, I would hope that you would subscribe to this YouTube channel. And also, when you do subscribe, push the little red bell, because that makes sure you'll be able to keep up on all of the future programming. Anyway, I think most people have noticed that there's been a lot of contention in politics recently. The Kavanaugh hearings, but even before that, battles between different groups politically in the streets, social media, people making threats, and so forth, to the point that a recent poll showed that 1/3 of the American public thinks that there could be another civil war. Maybe not one like, blue versus gray in 1861, but one that might look like Syria, in which you have different neighborhoods, factions, and so forth, battling each other. Now, could it happen? Let's think about this for a moment. And I'm going to make reference to one of the classic works in political psychology, and that is Sigmund Freud's Civilization and Its Discontents. Now, in it, you see a very interesting combination of both the political and the psychological. And Freud makes a point that civilization is held together by a very thin thread. Okay, a very thin thread. That people can go from being civilized and working with each other and so forth to suddenly extreme acts of barbarism. We've seen it take place in Syria. We've seen it take place in countries like Rwanda and the Balkans in the 1990s. Things that would happen almost overnight. Could it happen in the United States? Well, let's take a look here. And I'll give you my final appraisal at the end of this consideration. Now, the thing is, psychologically, human beings are individuals, but we think of ourselves within the collective. Now, you could call this a concept known as false ego projection. The ego meaning who you are, but then you can project out your viewpoints, your hopes, aspirations, values onto those who you feel share those same hopes, dreams, aspirations, and values. All right? Now, when you're first a little child, it's pretty simple. You look at your parents, your siblings, and you know that you're connected to them. And there's an assumption that you're all the same unit. Okay? And that you agree upon everything. And you care for one another. You're willing to do anything to help each other. Now, as we grow, we start encountering other groups of people, be they people at our church, synagogue, mosque, be they other forms of religious faith, be they just people that live in our neighborhood. There's a sense of identity, a sense of shared purpose. And then we could go into Bandura's social learning theory, which would conform to this quite well. Now, maybe as time goes on, we go to school, we are taught that this is our new, these people are connected to us because they go to our same school. But we also start learning that we are connected to nations, that people, at least we feel like, that people within our own nation share the same values, and that we have a certain camaraderie with them, and that maybe people on the outside don't have that same sort of unity with us. And we can look at that from a historical point of view. Maybe originally people were in small tribes of people. All of them were probably related, and they knew their relationship status. But then as time goes on, you break up into clans. because not everyone lives in the same place. But you still recognize those people as being your friends and allies. So even though you share a similar ancestor, you don't necessarily know each other's ancestry. You just know that you're connected. And so you learned in the old days, you learned these are the people I can count on. They won't, if I cross into their territory, they won't kill me, okay, or they won't enslave me. As time went on, we grew in numbers to where we formed city-states, and then it turned into like all the people that lived in that city. And then finally, we evolved into this idea of nation. Of course, that's kind of a modern concept. The idea of being a nation, people born in one nation having the same sorts of connection to each other, despite ethnic or religious differences. And modern schools and media and social norms and traditions bind us together in this kind of false ego projection. Now, obviously, if something happens to you within your own family, everyone's devastated. But if something happens to you or a member of your family nationally, it doesn't really affect that many people. But we still have this sense that if you hear about someone mistreated by another country who shares our same nationality, then we start getting angry. Even though you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't know this person, they're not related to me, but they're part of my club. They're part of my group. Now, what happens if those social threads that Freud talks about in his work start to get broken? What if differences in political opinion that used to be tolerable, that used to just be, okay, well, she disagrees with me on this, but we're still best friends, or he feels this political party is best, and I don't like that political party, but hey, we're still connected. They're still family. They're still friends. They're still associates. And we can still go fishing with them, and we can still do all these fun things. What if that starts to break down to the point that we start magnifying those differences? Well, there's where the breakdown and anarchy, and I don't mean that in the political sense, but more in the social sense, can begin. Where people will stop seeing each other as allies because they have the same flag, and they will start judging each other according to their opinions. Now, we're seeing this a lot. We're seeing demonization taking place. We're seeing threats taking place. We're seeing a idea that, oh, you voted for so-and-so, so I don't want you to be, I'm not going to invite you even to Thanksgiving, even though you share the same blood. This is getting dangerous. Because eventually what will happen is, and I don't mean when everyone's busy. They go to work, they're making a living for their family and so forth. But what happens if you do have a social unrest moment where that false ego projection starts to break down because the economy crashes, the infrastructure collapses, some horrible event takes place? Well, a lot of times we think, well, we'll just pull together. Traditionally, we did, but what if the separations have become so acute that we start to compete, that we start to see each other kind of like in an episode of The Walking Dead, where everyone's just going at each other? You'd think, well, they survived, they should try to pull together and cooperate. Might not be that way. And there's a lot of cases around the world where we see it doesn't turn out, like some sort of happy, everyone getting together and helping each other to manage through the crisis. This is where you could see a civil war. You could see different groups of people no longer seeing that connection to each other. Now, that could be based on a whole bunch of different variables, that they would pull together and then see the others as the enemies. But they will see all of those differences in such a way that those differences, even though originally were slight, will make all the difference, and therefore cause them not to feel like they are one body, one big family, so to speak. And that's where the danger can take place. And if it starts, it would be very hard to bring it back under control. So I would warn people, when using social media and on the attack and on the offensive all the time, that this is helping to break things apart. There was once a Star Trek episode where, I know it sounds kind of nerdy, but there was a Star Trek episode from the original Star Trek series where the crew, the humans on the Enterprise, were trapped with a group of Klingons, and there was this entity that was feeding off their antagonisms, feeding off their hatreds. They would do battles with each other, but then they would be repaired, and then would go back into battle again. It's almost as if there seems to be some sort of, kind of energies that are feeding into this negativity. And I would suggest that we try to get past those, or else the ramifications are not going to be so pleasant. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you'll come back and stay in touch with this station, or channel, I should say. My kids would have a fit if they heard me say YouTube station, YouTube channel, for more psychological and political insights. Take care now.